Audible 2456.
Welcome everybody to State of the Save 2.0. That's right, it's the relaunch. It's the let's do this all over again. Let's run it back, everybody.
Back the clock.
Thank you.
Let's run back the clock all the way to 2020. That's what the people want.
Yes. This is the you can jump in here where we actually know how to podcast now and not have to go back and listen to us when we didn't know how to podcast. And
Part 4 of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, everybody.
Yeah. Well, we walked you through every single alley and room of Metal Gear Solid 3 in audio form. We were trying stuff.
Yeah.
But here is State of the Save. Of course, I am Eric. With me, as always, is Michael. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing good.
We are a video game discussion podcast where we play through video games and we talk about the video games that we play. If this is the first episode that you have listened to, welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
I hope that many people try us out here on the relaunch. Maybe you have noticed our wonderful new artwork that we have now that looks pretty cool, that we've been holding on to for like 3 months and not telling anybody about. But
I've been teasing it and showing it off on the social media just because I wanted to give that artist credit immediately. Special thanks to Dual Moon Designs for our awesome dinosaur cyberpunk classic video game themed logo. That was a very specific request.
It was a tough request. It's one of those things where it's a tough thing to request for somebody. Like, I want a dinosaur that's also a
Nintendo 64
Nintendo system. Yeah. Basically, we wanted like a kind of a mascot, and dinosaurs are cool, and somehow that's what we ended up with. So don't ask too many questions. But yes, here at the relaunch, we hope that everybody is joining us. If you were listening to State of the Save 1.0, thank you for coming with us to 2.0. We appreciate that. Lots of fun stuff today. Starting off our new game discussion with Jedi Fallen Order, which is a wonderful time to play Fallen Order because Jedi Survival comes out in 2 months. So it's just in time for us to refresh our memories on our buddy Cal and learn all about his adventures, so we're ready for Jedi Survival, which looks really wonderful. I watched the trailer again last night, and boy, that game looks good. I think it's going to be pretty exciting. So let's go ahead and jump into things. Let's do what we normally do, though, and spend a little bit of time up top talking about other video game shenanigans we've been into. Michael, what other video game shenanigans have you been involved in?
I've just been expanding what I've been playing last time on the show, which if you're new, I've been playing 2 games a lot of. The first one I want to go over is Atari 50. I have completed the entire timeline structure of that. For those of you who don't know, Atari 50 is a collection of about 100 games through Atari's 50-year history, going through their arcade days, their early computer days, all the way from the 2600 all the way up to the Atari Jaguar, and where Atari, and kind of leaving in a sense of like optimism with like the homebrew scene and like a sense of renewed like nostalgia and reverence for Atari. It covers like the video game crash of 1983. It has incredible interviews, doing like deep dives, asking like questions of like rumors and everything at Atari. But I finished that thing. I played most of the game. Turns out the Atari Jaguar is a tough system to go back to.
It turns out that maybe that thing hasn't aged as well as other classic video game consoles that you play.
There is one game on there that freaking rules, and that game is Tempest 2000.
I'm about to say, the only other one that I think I would have any interest in going back and fiddling with would be the Alien vs. Predator. But, of course, that is a licensed game and therefore not available for us to have on this here collection. But,
There
Yeah,
are a bunch of missing licensed games in that collection, like Superman for the Atari 2600. There's a few licensed stuff that... Raiders of the Lost Ark for the 2600 was a big one. That is a big missing mark. A bunch of developers make reference to it, but there's no gameplay footage or anything of it. They just reference how that was like the building blocks for a lot of the early adventure games, so like Legend of Zelda kind of took cues from both like adventure on the Atari and Raiders of the Lost Ark. So if you are interested at all in video game history, this is an absolute essential pickup. It's basically a video game documentary that you play, and every time a video game is brought up relevant to the timeline, you can hit a button and immediately jump in and start playing it. It's the perfect collection for just hopping in, playing 5 or 10 minutes of a game and going, okay, I get the historical significance of this now.
And I don't want to retread conversations from last episode, even though it was a completely different version of the show, mind you. So, I mean, some could say that, does it even exist anymore? I don't know. But I do think that's the perfect way to do this collection. It's not very interesting to me to go back and play Atari games, especially most of them. There's like a couple of exceptions here and there. But to kind of do it in this particular method, I think makes it work.
Yeah.
What was your other game you were chopping away at back on the show that we're not even sure if it exists anymore because it was 1.0?
Yeah, it's gone. That's lost. It's been put in the archives.
You
watched
totally
over
can't
by
just
a Guardian.
Scroll down. You just can't scroll down in your feed here.
One episode.
And find that.
Yeah. Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion.
Flip phones and everything.
Flip phones and everything. I am now about halfway through that game. Does the JRPG trope of doing a time jump halfway through the story. That thing's really good. I'm having a lot of fun. A lot of stupid fun with Final Fantasy VII Reunion.
I mean, you sound like you were pretty high on it last time we spoke about it, and
I just started last time, but now I've finally got more into the story and more into the characters and everything, and I'm starting to see a lot of like the foundations for where Final Fantasy VII starts kind of be put into place here. So this is a prequel to Final Fantasy VII. It stars a character named Zack Fair, who is a up-and-coming member of the Soldier. He wants to be a Soldier First Class. He starts the game in Soldier Second Class, and he gets to a point where his mentor and another Soldier First Class break away from the Soldier program and go rogue. So it's up to Zack and Sephiroth, to good old boy Sephiroth, to hunt them down and bring him to justice.
Pal.
Yeah,
our good old pal Sephiroth. Just nothing bad will ever happen there. I like that concept of it being like a prequel where you're hanging out with the villain. I always like that kind of stuff. It's like, hey, my good old pal Sephiroth, where nothing bad will ever happen.
Cloud's there. He's just a basic foot soldier. Not a lot to him, but he talks to. He has a good rapport with Zack and everything, and they're realizing that they're have kind of similar upbringings, which is cool. So I'm very interested to see how it plays out. I know some stuff about Final Fantasy VII. I never finished that game, but I played the remake, and this being like released in between part 1 and part 2 of this remake trilogy, and they said this is going to be very important moving forward, because without spoilers, there are things that have changed from like base Final Fantasy VII that I believe this game will require a knowledge of going forward, because there's things that happen that diverge from like this point in the timeline. So I'm very interested to see how that shakes out. I love Zack's relationship with Aerith, who's my favorite character from the original Final Fantasy VII. Just a lot of the stuff they do with her is still absolutely fantastic. She's the best character in that game. I know a lot of people are Team Tifa. I'm Team Aerith all the way. But Like, there's just a bit where a lot of the conversations you have with her is like, we should make a flower cart and go sell them on the upper layers of Midgard because they don't have a lot of flowers there. We can make a killing. So it's just sweet. I love their relationship.
I feel like you're two kind of people. There's the Aerith, like, let's go sell flowers, and there's like Tifa, who doesn't Tifa at one point get in like a pull-up competition or something in Final Fantasy VII? I feel like we're two different kinds of people. Like, one of us is like, let's do this pull-up competition. The other one's like, let's sell these flowers.
That pull-up competition minigame in Final Fantasy VII Remake is amazing. It is incredible. There's also a squats competition.
It's kind of like in No More Heroes, where you could do mini games about working out.
Kind of, yeah.
Bench press. It's better than like in the NBA 2K games and stuff when you have to do like the combine mini games. Like I was doing the NBA one. This is several years ago, and it's like the player like progression mode. And for some reason, like my 2K character couldn't bench press 225. And I'm sitting there just getting unbelievably angry because I can't do the minigame right. But like I'm like, I can fucking do this in real life. Why is it that my poor little 2K guy can't even do it? I have mixed emotions on the walking out minigames in video games.
You know what has a good working out minigame? I'm not to get too off topic, but the Fight Night series, I remember having really good ones. Because it was always like you train for what you need during the match. Like if you need to pump up your stamina, you can do a stamina minigame. But if you do it badly, it'll hurt your stamina through the match. Because if you overwork or you don't work hard enough.
They tried to bring that kind of stuff back for like the UFC games, where you would do prepping and you had like a certain amount of days. You know how you have like fight camp in the UFC. So you have a certain amount of days to walk on certain things, but then you also had to do promo stuff on those days. So it's like, are you going to go do a signing today, or are you going to work on your grappling? And but
you can't do both.
It was actually fun. No, you
only have 2 hours. You only have 2 hours in this day. You gotta decide one thing to do.
I want to say like tweeting was like an activity that took a whole day. So do you want to send out some angry tweets? Or do you want to go to the gym and work on your cardio? But yeah, I actually like a lot of those modes in sports games where it's like the training modes and all that stuff. I think that's fun.
It puts investment into preparing for like the match, so it doesn't feel like you're just checking off. It actually puts tension before the match. And if you blow it, you're like, oh man, I'm gonna pay for this. I gotta watch my leg.
Yeah, especially like fighting in like games that are trying to do simulation of boxing and like UFC. Like that sport is so much preparation and so little actually fighting that it kind of does make more sense to focus on, you know, like we need to make that a part of the game because hey, most people's careers is preparing to fight like 2 times a year. But yeah, I actually kind of like that stuff. I think it's fun. Anything else you've been fiddling with?
That's pretty much it for me. I have delved into figuring out what I'm spending gift card money on that I got for Christmas. I just got Disco Elysium on sale, and I have a little bit more gift card money to go, but that's where I started that. I'm not deep in it enough to talk about because that thing seems complex.
That thing's kind of a novel in video game form, you know. It's a commitment.
It seems like an Eric game.
It is and it isn't. I wonder if like it's one of those situations where is it a situation where it's so much reading that I'm just sitting there going like I'd rather just read the book of this game instead of playing it.
Just some of the concepts they specifically talk over and the world they creative dealing with like there's a lot of like union disputes and talks about like freedom of the workforce and stuff like that, and talks about revolutions and all that stuff. It seems like
are you saying that games that deal heavily in things like classism and
I mean, you're a Warhammer fan, so
the suppression of the working man is something that appeals to me? Are you saying that this is a
Am I
thing that might
wrong?
appeal to me.
Am I wrong in that assertion?
I would like to be at this point that all of a sudden, as I talk, you just hear in the background, do 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 do. My fellow workers, comrades, don't listen to Snowball. That was an Animal Farm reference. Thank you. Ooh, referencing classic literature right now. See, I bet you didn't believe that was going to happen on State of the Save 2.0.
You need to check out Disco Elysium. I think it's definitely your thing, just from the first little bit I put in. Going, Eric would love this.
I imagine it would be really good. I would like to sit down and play that. I'm sure it would be on a good sale that I can pick it up on.
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of cleanup, primarily because it seems starting in February, there's just going to be a lot of video games that I'm going to want to play right when they come out.
It's backlog season, baby.
Yeah. Atomic Heart comes out in February.
Ooh, that
which
was
I actually
fun.
look pretty. I've gotten on the ball for that game. I wasn't exactly sold on it until recently, where it looks like it's got a lot of near future or first person shooter with weird science and technology and all this stuff. It's like, that seems like something I would enjoy. And then in March, we have the behemoths of Jedi Survival, and we have Resident Evil 4 remake, and just all that stuff hits hard. Dark Tide for consoles has to come out eventually, right? Like, it's got to happen eventually.
That's happening sometime.
I feel like they've just gone radio silent on that video game in a weird way, where maybe you shouldn't go radio silent on your video game like 2 days before it's supposed to come out. But hey, the PC people seem to be having a ball. But so I've just been doing a lot of backlog cleaning up. Been playing Inscryption.
Okay. Yeah.
It came out on the Switch. That thing's pretty good. I feel like I'm at the point now where I am pretty close to finishing it. I talked to a friend of the show, Nick, about it, who enjoyed it a lot and finished it. And I kind of got my vibe of like, hey, have I reached a point that I should just go ahead and plan on making my last big run to finish this thing? And I seem to be right around the corner. That game is really good. The card game mechanic side of it's pretty fun. I like the card game in itself, but the kind of the way that game presents itself is just top notch. That's a high quality video game.
That's awesome.
I also got really deep into Insurgency, Sandstorm. Insurgency is a first person shooter that's more like a tactical, think cross between like an Arma kind of thing with some Counter-Strike mechanics where you purchase using upgrades weapons.
That's a 360 game, right? Is that from that era?
Nah, it's an Xbox One couple years ago game. It's a online multiplayer released by Focus Interactive, which is a studio that for some weird reason I'm always interested in the stuff that Focus Interactive puts out, because they put out weird stuff. But it's a good little kind of like online multiplayer, more like, I hate, it's not like hardcore, like, it's still a game. But, like little things, like it doesn't tell you how much ammunition's in your clip. You have to just kind of go by the weight of the clip, and, people dropping like 2 bullets, that kind of stuff. It's pretty good. I kind of got hooked on that recently as my multiplayer kick. It replaced Chivalry 2 as my multiplayer game of choice. But before we jumped on here for the show today, Rainbow Six Siege announced that apparently they have partnered with, not owned by the Saudi government, even though we thought it was like yesterday, WWE. So you can now get skins for professional wrestlers in Rainbow Six Siege.
Wait, time out. Did people think that the deal with the Saudi government turned out to be Rainbow Six Siege, or is that a completely different thing?
No. I'm just saying that it turned out that we're kind of leaving some people in the dark here. Yesterday, it was believed that WWE had sold to the Saudi government, basically. That turned out to be false, even though a bunch of people came out and were like, yeah, we know it's true, trust us. A bunch of, like, reporters and stuff. It turned out that they did not sell to the Saudi government. They're apparently talking to Disney today. So, maybe one day you'll go to Epcot and you can suplex around the world. But apparently in Rainbow Six Siege, as of soon, you can play as, like, a skin with The Undertaker. You can get a skin of Becky Lynch. And just, I sit there and I think about when Rainbow Six Siege first came out, and I first played it the week it came out, and how it positioned itself as this, like, really serious, tactical game. And now...
Then it was G.I. Joe for a little bit.
It's still G.I. Joe. I have a Lara Croft skin for my Ash character. Like, it's at G.I. Joe standard right now. But I was sitting there going, like, I should probably try to get that Undertaker skin.
Becky Lynch is wearing her outfit from, like, the pre-COVID days, it seems like.
It's the back man. To that. It's the man persona.
Her probably most signature look.
That's the most popular one. You know, you go with the popular one. You don't go with, like, Big Time Bex.
Big Time Bex in that ridiculously impossible to walk in outfit from Survivor Series.
That was a fun outfit. I don't know what you're talking about. Had a great time. Great time. Speaking of which, before we move on, there was a little bit of wrestling video game crossovers thanks to the greatest professional wrestler of all time right now. Maybe not all time, but active professional wrestler. Kenny Omega doing his entry to Wrestle Kingdom, which was just a extra large Sephiroth reference, including, using the Tron to shoot out the one wing. And
that made me so happy. That rolled so hard.
And that might be, I finally got to sit down and watch the thing. That might be one of the top 5 matches of all time, too. So, one of the top 5 matches of all time, Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay at Wrestle Kingdom, might also be the match in which Kenny Omega came out dressed as Sephiroth.
My hope is that Kenny Omega gets you to play Final Fantasy VII.
No, because Kenny Omega is also a major Undertale fan, and as someone who played Undertale for this show, me and Kenny we can agree on a lot of things, it seems like. But our favorite video games, not so much. I hope with State of Save 2.0, I can renew my quest to get either Kenny Omega or Xavier Woods onto this podcast. That's my whole reason of doing this, is just to get them on here.
Just get big enough to have one professional wrestler on.
Yeah, if Kenny Omega was going to be on the show, we would play whatever he wants. If he wanted to play, Final Fantasy VII, we would do it. We would do it, Kenny. Tell Kenny. Somebody tweet at Kenny and be like, this State of the Save podcast will play whatever video game you want if you want to come join us.
If he just wants to be a part of the game club, just like, I'll just write in with my thoughts. I'll be like, yeah, we're
yeah, that's fine.
We'll bend to his whim. We'll sell out instantly.
He's the belt collector, man. He's Kenny Omega. He's the bout machine. You can't argue with Kenny Omega, the one wing angel. God damn it. But yeah, says it was a great entry. It was also tangentially related to video games. Instead of video games, I've just been working on tabletop games, where I have built a new Warhammer 40k kill team. I've built the Pathfinder's kill team, a Tau kill team. Think space, kind of very clean science fiction people, units for 40k, which is usually more of a science fiction meets medieval kind of setting. I built this team for multiple reasons. One is I was tired of getting my ass kicked. I've been playing this game for about 10 months now, and I don't win very often. So I went out and did my research. I built my Pathfinder team, played my first game last night, and kicked the shit out of my opponent. And my opponent might be listening to this show right now, and I want him to know that I picked this team because I think this is the team that will dominate him for the next 6 months. and I feel no regret about it. I was sick and tired of getting my ass kicked in Warhammer Kill Team. But I really actually enjoyed the team. Had a great game last night against friends of the show, Nick. My Tau Pathfinders beat his Orc Commandos. It was a good game though. Good game. Speaking of good games, Say and Save, where we bring the highest quality of segues. Jedi Fallen Order.
Yes.
Jedi Fallen Order is a damn good video game, and playing it for this show has reminded me of how good of a video game it was. I think we said on this show one time, Respawn has never made a bad game.
I stand by that.
I stand by that also. If you look at Respawn's history and its catalog, I dare you to find one bad Respawn game. Now, apparently, the only Respawn game that I have not played is the Medal of Honor VR game.
The Oscar-winning...
Yeah, it won an Oscar, so say what you want about it. But apparently, that thing's pretty good, too, for a VR game. So it's almost like these Respawn guys, they seem to know what they're doing.
This was a studio that formed by ex-Infinity Ward people post Modern Warfare 2, right? Those are the same guys?
Yeah, but also, let's say this, they didn't make a bad Call of Duty either. And that's somebody who was playing those things since the first one. Infinity Ward made damn good games ahead of time. And then when they became the Call of Duty people, they released just an all-time or in Modern Warfare. Then Modern Warfare 2 is a great video game. Infinity Ward knows what they're doing. Respawn used to be Infinity Ward. It's a very
interesting through line to trace Modern Warfare all the way to Jedi Fallen Order. It's very interesting, how we got to that point, because they had just made first-person shooters up until they got to here, and so whenever they said they were making a third-person action game, it's like, okay, that's a bit different. Then you see that they got the combat director from God of War 3, and you're like, okay.
Which is weird, because I don't feel a lot of God of War combat in this game. The combat seems more inspired by things it feels inspired by Dark Souls.
This game is not, I wouldn't say it's like a Soulsborne it's definitely a Soulsborne light. It has a lot of inspiration from Soulsborne games, but this actually, playing this again, it actually feels a lot more like Sekiro, which is crazy because Sekiro came out the same year, so they wouldn't be inspired by each other. It's a lot more offensive based than Dark Souls combat. More similar to Bloodborne or even Sekiro is definitely offensive based. And there's a huge emphasis on timing your parries with sword strikes in Sekiro and in Fallen Order here, as well as the big thing is in Sekiro they call it the balance meter, but the meter you have to take down, and once you break it, you break the opponent's guard. And in Sekiro that was an instant take down a health bar, even bosses. Here it mostly, we can kill your enemy in one shots, but some of your bigger enemies it'll just knock back. It's not an instant kill, but it can knock a good, I'm thinking of the first fight. At this point we've only had one fight with a purge trooper. That does it.
We've had two.
We've had two? Okay.
We had one against the one that's got the two sticks, and then we fought one with the staff. That's right. Okay. So, yeah, we fought two of them. But yeah, you're right there. Those are the ones that if you break the stamina meter or whatever they call it here, it's not an instant kill, but it is a heavy amount of damage. You can chop them down half a bar. It seems a lot more active, instead of a Dark Souls where you're usually playing very defensive and then strike a couple of times and then dodge. This kind of promotes you to be a little bit more aggressive, but it does a great job also of hey man, even standard troopers, scout troopers, if they catch you in a situation where they juggle you a little bit, they can take you down pretty damn fast. I mean, if you get hit 2 or 3 times with them, scout trooper sticks, it'll wreck you pretty quick. But it also does a great job of giving you just a ton of tools to play with, and also having almost a rhythm to the combat of how you take down each particular kind of enemy. Like, it's a shooting enemy, I can parry that and cause it to reflect back. It's an enemy that's a melee enemy, I can wait for them to strike and parry and break their guard, or I can use my force powers to freeze them and then strike them with a heavy attack or something like that. It does a great job of building a rhythm.
That is a good point. There's definitely a rhythm to the combat, especially in the lightsaber side of the skill tree, when you unlock the moves that are coordinated to like button press timings. Because if you attack square to like get in there, you will break a lot of guard. But there are moves in there where if you strike, wait for a bit, and then strike again, you could do like a thrust. Or if I think you combine a square with a timed triangle, Cal will do a strike combined with like a big overhead thrust. So there's a lot of timing-based moves in there for if you want to get really tactical. But for a good portion of the combat, it's a lot of just being aggressive. Like, you're not going to be doing... Dodge rolls in this game are a lot more tactical than they are even in like a Souls game where you know the meme, dodge roll, dodge roll, dodge roll. You're not really doing that here. You're mostly doing like a quick one hit of the circle or B button to do like a quick jolt to the side, and from there, if you unlock the ability, you can do like a kick to break their guard, or you can hit twice to do a roll to get further away. But that roll is not... Like in Souls, it's not invincible. You can still get hit while you're mid-roll. Like, it's not a guaranteed get-out-of-jail-free card.
Also, it has the whole mechanic of unblockable attacks. So really, the roll and the dodge and all that stuff is really there for those unblockable, mega attacks that the enemy throws at you. The game, because it has the lightsaber, it's really promoting more the parrying and the blocking, because, the lightsaber was able to, block shots and block, pretty much everything they throw at you. So it's really promoting you getting up, getting aggressive, getting in the face of the enemy, breaking their guard, and, punishing them. One thing I also want to talk about when we talk about combat is just how damn good the combat feels and like the use of the lightsaber. Like, Cal is considered like, he's still kind of like a novice, right? Like, he was never a full-blown Jedi and all that stuff, but it just flows. Like, when he moves it and when you're using it in combat, it feels really natural, and it feels like it has just the right amount of weight to it. And it feels really, really good, and it feels like how that weapon should feel in the hand.
The character... Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The character progression in this game, kind of bouncing off what you're saying, the character progression is so smart with how they ramp up the way you gain your abilities back. And not only that, but they tie that expertly into the story of how he can't remember a lot of these things because Cal's dealing with a lot of PTSD and trauma, so you're unlocking your force abilities through that, and then you're unlocking your lightsaber abilities through the skill tree, because he's out of practice with the lightsaber. He's back to square one as a novice. So you have the basic moves, and then, which is a pretty hefty setup there. You got your basic strikes, you got your guards, you got your parries, and you don't even, I don't think, have your even heavy attack unlocked yet. You just have your light attacks, your parries, and your dodges. And from that basic, 4 item structure, the dodge, the parry, the attack, and then later the heavy attacks, that's what all your moves are going to be built up with from here on out, minus the force abilities. So it's a very smart ramp up of starting relatively simple with the combat and escalating everything from there. Your lightsaber's your lightsaber. It's only going to get stronger on the skill tree and in that one hidden upgrade that everyone should have right now, and if you don't have it right now, go back and explore a little bit before you continue on. But yeah,
I feel like one thing they do really well is they do the whole mechanic of like a experienced character that should know how to do all this stuff, having a good reason on why they don't, because they do tie it so well into the story. But also they do a good job of showing Cal like making these breakthroughs as he unlocks these things. It's not like, oh, now I remembered how to do this. It's him having an emotional breakthrough in his character that triggers his ability to remember how to do these things or learn how to do these things.
or seeing a wall, like the wall that he needs to wall run on, and then it going back to his training, because we at this point in the story, we don't know. Well, we kind of can infer, if you know anything about Star Wars, you know things kind of go bad for the Jedi at some point. And although we don't know all the details for Cal's story, we know that there's a lot of trauma there, and a lot of like forgetting a lot of stuff as he's like staying hidden from the Jedi hunters.
I feel like it's pretty straightforward and honest that like this game is set post the Clone Wars, you know, and we're trying not to we're not going to do spoilers for the game past the point that we've played, but you know, those movies are extremely popular. People know what happened to them.
Yeah.
So it's pretty obvious that Cal is dealing with the fact that they talk about it all the time. He survived the Clone Purge during the Clone Wars. So obviously he's dealing with all the survivor's guilt and all that stuff. I talk about a lot. There was a point in my life in which I was a big Star Wars fan, huge Star Wars fan. And I'm at the point in my life now where I just choose to pick and choose what I engage with. There's just so much volume of Star Wars now that I just kind of pick and choose with what I want to engage with and what I care about. Because some stuff's just not directed at me. Some stuff's just not what I'm looking for out of a Star Wars story. One thing I like about Fallen Order so much is that it does a fairly mature story about an event in the Star Wars canon that should be dealt with fairly maturely.
Yes.
And that's kind of something that I always think about a lot, is like, this is like a mass, basically glorified execution of the defenders of this entire galaxy in a relatively short amount of time. That's a mass traumatic event to the people that survive it. And I think Fallen Order does a really wonderful job of showing the repercussions of that event from a very human point of view. And I really, really like the cast of this game a lot.
Yes. They fit they fit very nicely into Star Wars archetypes, but still feeling like original characters, because Cal has a lot of similarities to all of the main characters of all three trilogies, Anakin, Luke, and Rey, in that they are of similar ages when their stories truly begin. They always like to start around the 18, 19-year-old range when their stories begin, and they are characters that begin like Anakin much earlier. They begin isolated and then get swept up into like this journey in discovering their connection with the Force and growing more powerful in the Force. Now, where Cal differs is he does have a backstory, a backstory with some basic knowledge of the Force, but that was like cut short, which is good for, again, how they structure this game is smart. That's great for where you need to be story-wise, because you need that baseline knowledge to even begin combat. Otherwise, if the game was like where you start out like Luke Skywalker, you'll just be sitting on the ship with the lightsaber, dodging like blaster bolts from droids for half the game.
It also keeps you from having to do the weird thing where like your character does like 10 minutes of training and all of a sudden is extremely capable with a lightsaber. You can just go ahead and skip all that stuff because Cal's already done years and years and years of training and learning about his craft. And it's just more of he's just been rusty. instead of him being incompetent. One thing you brought up is they do fit the Star Wars tropes, but one thing I like about them is they're not directly aping a character.
Yeah, exactly.
One of my kind of least favorite things about when franchises become legendary and then are revisited in the future or present, a lot of times what happens is it seems like in the new versions of those franchises, people try to cast or write a character list just like those characters they love from the old movies. So, well, this guy is our Han Solo, and this guy is our, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and this guy is our... And it's like, well, what made those characters work is that they were original and just in this universe. Here, yes, they fit some of the same tropes, but there is a lot of differences there. Our cast is not just a Obi-Wan Kenobi and a Han Solo and a Luke Skywalker. Like, they all kind of are looking at the world through different prisms, and it makes it a little bit more fresh. It feels like a different story set in the Star Wars universe.
Exactly.
Instead of A New Hope 2.0.
Yes.
Which is why I like it. Also, I like that Fallen Order does some of the more grittiness that I really like. The game starts off...
Yes.
Go ahead.
It does, but it doesn't lose a lot of, like, the Star Wars, like, whimsy and playfulness in a lot of ways. There are moments where I just kicked back and, like, smiled at this thing because, like, a scene charmed me because of, like, the way it writes its characters and Cal and BD1's relationship, especially.
It has a lot of the pulp stuff in it that made those original movies so good.
It's not afraid to delve into some of the more lighter aspects of Star Wars while still telling a mature story. It strikes that balance, like, so perfectly.
Yeah, it's it doesn't undercut its story with its humor. The humor is not there just to get a cheap laugh. It has, like I said, it has a lot of pulp kind of style in it, where the characters are able to sometimes have fun. You can have a story that has a lot of levity and a lot of weight to it, but still have people be able to have some laughs and still enjoy themselves from time to time. And I'm thinking about just like several different moments in this. Like, there's a lot of like some heavy stuff in this whole thing, but then there is moments like Cal looking back and be like, hey, let's go for a swim as he jumps off into the waters on Kashyyyk. Or,
just all his moments with BD1.
Yeah. Yeah, BD1 is basically your comedy kind of... But he's not a comedy relief. He's somebody to play off of and make things have a little bit of levity to them.
He's like a dog companion.
Yeah, and I think that stuff really helps. I talk about kind of... Star Wars doesn't need... I'm a huge Warhammer 40k person, but Star Wars doesn't need to be 40k. It doesn't need to be dark and grim, and oppressive. It doesn't need to be that. That's not what it is at its core. But when you're dealing with serious events in that universe, taking things with a little bit more serious tone is I think necessary. And like, even at the start of the game, you're on a shipbreaker yard, literally disassembling the past. Kyle is hiding from his past and literally disassembling the past. Day in, day out.
The panning shots over the scrapyard at the beginning are so good. And I want to get some of the technical talk out of the way right here. We're playing this finally at 60 frames a second in beautiful, like, as high of resolutions as these new consoles can handle. I haven't seen a lot of pop-in or any pop-in compared to playing this at release. This is, like, a great time to be playing this game because I'm like, man, this game is beautiful and I'm not running into any technical issues. And, like, that marred this game at launch. So that was...
There's so many moments, at the beginning on the shipyards where you're panning over and you're seeing them bring down ships to start cutting down, and you're seeing ships off in the distance being, broken apart. Stuff's like I talked about already, jumping into the water on Kashyyyk, where you're swimming and the waves are coming up over you as you're swimming towards the AT-AT. Just a ton of beautiful scenery, and it really adds to that whole adventure feel of traveling across the universe on distant exotic planets, and I really, really enjoy all those kind of aspects.
Yes. We talked about this being sorry.
No, go ahead.
We talked about this being like very inspired by Souls in the combat, but the exploration is more so than I've remembered, but it's very Uncharted.
Oh yeah. Lots of falling
with a dash
down.
Yes. With a dash of Metroid thrown in there, like the perfect amount of Metroid thrown into. So, just the way it combines like all those elements are a lot of fun.
But that also fits Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because like that's a pulp story, right? Like Star Wars in its heart, those original trilogy is very much a pulp story. And that's what this is. The traveling the world, climbing mountains, braving icy cliffs and winter and big storms. That's what you want out of that kind of story, and it does it really well.
I think of that scene from A New Hope that's very much inspired from like 1940s adventure films where Luke uses the grappling hook and swings with the princess like across the gap. It's a lot more, I use the word swashbuckling a lot on the show, but it has like that kind of like flair to it.
Yeah.
And that's something Fallen Order like really leans into. Like it's all of like it leans into a lot of like the classic inspirations from Star Wars, but also is using the right amount of like visual language from Star Wars to tell its story. Like I think of like just at the opening moments here in the scrapyard, like when they lower the Separatist ship down, and you instantly know if you grew up with like the prequels, like I recognize like that droid ship, so then it connects like they're tearing, like we said, they're tearing apart using the Empire is using the material from like these old ships to like make their new Star Cruisers and everything, and they're basically doing it with these construction workers working like minimum wage. There's your classism that you like so much. The evil Empire's like keeping the man down, keeping the workers.
One thing I love about really fleshed out universes, I think when you do a big universe, you need to show more of this, is showing how does this whole system work day to day. And that's one thing that they've done. This game does a really great job. From the opening when we meet Cal and he's hiding out as basically a walker on this scrapping planet where he's kind of keeping his head down. You see like this is how the Empire disassembles all this stuff. This is a part of the cog in the machine. And it lets you put the story into those kind of perspectives, so you get to learn about some of that stuff. Like, oh, cool, this is what they're doing. But it also gets you more, ingrained with your characters. I want to kind of, we don't want to talk beat, but I do want to talk about the opening. It's a great opening. Not only does it show you that, a lot of tutorial, with, exploration and how you navigate the environment, but the whole opening that leads up to Cal being discovered, in the whole trope of Cal's been hiding out and cut off from the Force, and on a random construction accident leaves him to have to use the Force for just a second to save his friend, and that brings down the Imperial Inquisition on him.
Or Ralph.
Yeah. It's it's a really, really cool kind of way to introduce things, and it's
there's
a great
a lot
open.
There's a lot of cool visual elements here. Like some of my favorite parts of this section are actually in this opening sequence, like Cal seeing the reaction to the Jedi Starfighter, and him process saying, "This must be 3 years old," and then Cal just looking like deer in headlights, just says, 5. Great moment.
Yeah, it's just like this is a day that I'll never forget kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I love the one of my favorite sequences in this is actually after he rescues his buddy there, the train ride sequence.
Yes.
Not necessarily the dream sequence where he's having the paranoia about his friend betraying him. More what happens when you realized, oh, okay, I've blown my cover here, but I'm not. It doesn't go instantly into a chase sequence, right? He doesn't walk down from the saving his friend on top of the ship and then gets chased. It's that like, okay, I gotta get home. I gotta get my stuff. If I get my stuff, I'll find my way off the planet. It's the walking on the plan. Oh crap, I blew it. Let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. And that's, it's really well done. And it really builds the tension of like what kind of life Cal is living, what stresses he is under, and then when the Inquisition shows up and you get that whole sequence, it adds a lot more to it. It adds a lot more to like how serious this is.
That's right, because like because at this point, after the really cool Force Vision sequence where we meet Cal's master, who, fun fact, Cal's master, Jaro Tapal, is Lasat. The species he is the original concept art for Wookiees, and I like that in the new canon. They just made him like a race. So his thick master comes to him in a vision, says like, trust only in the Force, trust no one. You gotta depend on yourself, but only depend on yourself and the Force. Which I want to touch on just for a bit, because Force visions are like my favorite trope in Star Wars. I love them so much. They're philosophically interesting, and they're used like in really interesting story moments, and like not just in the movies and the expanded universe too. But
okay.
that was it.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you had something else. No, you're right though, and this game does use a lot of the Force visions and things like that to kind of fill in Kyle's past.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see those a lot as we go forward. But one of my kind of favorite things about this whole sequence, I don't know if we had seen a lot of the Inquisition at this point when this game came out. I think they started showing up a lot more post Fallen Order.
Just Rebels and comics and a couple novels at this point when Fallen Order was out. But Rebels was the big one that like introduced them, especially like the double blade sabers that like do the spin thing, the helicopter lightsabers. That's all Rebels.
Well, I think also it's something for me, like I said, who picks and chooses what he engages with.
That thunder's on my end.
Oh, yeah, it's raining like crazy. I don't know if it's coming through on the recording or not, but it is like it's thundering everywhere.
Well, that one definitely did. But anyway,
so hey, listeners, you get an ASMR of us talking through the rain. But I really, really like the whole concept of the Inquisition here. I like the idea that they are. It makes sense, when the lore started really leaning heavily into escaped Jedi and Jedi who didn't get caught up in the purge. It makes sense that there would be a whole task force designed to bringing them in. And it also gives us a really cool, villain to be our kind of main antagonist with the second sister. There's a great sequence with the train here where there's a train escape and all that fun stuff that leads to one of my favorite kind of tropes in these games, when you have to fight the big boss at the beginning of the game and get your ass kicked, because it is a really fun, like, it sets the ground between like, this is where you're at right now, and when you get to the end of the game, this is where you're at now. It's a really good bookmark kind of situation, and it fits well in storytelling to be like, here's an encounter with what's going to be your main problem.
I love the language, the visual like body language on Second Sister, the way she commands the room, so to speak, whenever she's around. Like, all her actions are like the coolest thing. When she stabs Prouth and then blocks your lightsaber without even removing it from him, just ignites the second side to block him without flinching. I like how you crash down on the landing pad for the duel, and she just like does the like light jump down and just gracefully floats to the bottom, then disses your stance going, I know that stance, you're a Padawan. Just all of that is so freaking good. Her voice acting now, and we'll see, like, especially as we go through this game, her voice actress is incredible. She's a scene stealer. She eats up every single scene she's in. Star Wars villains are, yes.
She knows how to, she's over the top in a way that you want as your big villain.
Yes.
She's not, like, if you played this character subtle, it would be at a negative. It would be a negative if you played the second sister as subtle. She needs to be over the top and, bleeding confidence and arrogance. That's the way that character needs to be.
Because
she does a wonderful job.
She's got the silent muscle type as her number 2 with the Night Sister. There's a really funny bit here where after this whole thing happens, she like force pulls you and then grabs you over the ledge before she drops you on the train sequence. She says, "I found the Jedi." I was like, "We've been what? No, you didn't." that bit just struck me as funny.
Yeah, it's a good setup for what's going to be your main antagonists.
This is a fantastic opening to this game.
Yeah,
then we meet our side companions. Seer and Grease roll up and save you from getting one shot.
And that kind of sets us on our mission for the game. The game does a good job of getting to the point. We get the mysterious, like, we're going to take you to this planet. There's something you need to see, which is a trope in storytelling,
Yeah.
But what I like about it is it takes us to Zepho?
The first planet, Bogano, is...
Oh, Bogano. It takes you to Bogano first.
Yeah.
And then you go to Zepho. Bogano, and it basically is... You do some adventuring. Maybe you fight a big frog. Maybe you don't.
Bogdo, the bane of every new player's existence. Because you're like, game one's gonna go left, I'm gonna go right, and then you get eaten by a frog.
The funny thing is, like, the first time I played this game, I had trouble with him. Here, I whooped his ass in the first play.
Elden Ring made us...
me and you again.
Yep.
Cue lightsaber, dead frog. But it's really another beautiful environment with, like, the dragons off in the distance and all the little furry creatures jumping around, and but basically it sets up the plot for the entire game that we are following in the footsteps of a Jedi who was the master.
He's Seer's master. So
Seer's master.
Now's a good time to get into, like, Seer as a character. Seer is basically taking on the role of Cal's Jedi Master at this point. However, she severed her connection to the Force. This is kind of a trope that's been more explored in the new canon of Star Wars, with, like, Jedi, like, famously Luke Skywalker in, like, The Last Jedi, and Obi-Wan in the Obi-Wan series said they, like, after traumatic events, they cut themselves off from the Force. Is like a newer concept.
It's also a concept they've explored. Well, the concept that other Force users can track you by the Force.
Yes.
Like, I'm thinking about in particular with the Obi-Wan series. Well, like, Obi-Wan does it almost more as a way of going underground. Like, if you are still actively using the Force,
like, the Jedi hunters can hunt you.
Yeah, it can hunt you by it. So, like, I've always liked that concept, that, like, you have to cut yourself off to keep yourself from being detected. I am not a fan of just being real sad and cutting yourself off for obvious reasons. We're not going to get into that because we got a time limit on this whole show. But
we're not going to argue about the sequel trilogy.
But
anyway.
She's shut herself off, but she does kind of play as a mentor role for Cal. And her master was someone who was very much kind of, like, fascinated in archaeology and the study of the past. And he has discovered, and we are following kind of his footsteps, an ancient race called the Zepho. The Zepho?
It's just the Zepho who live on the planet Zepho.
The Zepho. Oh, okay, yeah, okay, I get confused.
Yeah.
Zepho, who live on the planet Zepho. They are
Vegeta from the planet Vegeta.
Exactly. But they are basically an ancient Force race, and he has, inside this tomb, discovered that they have a way to basically track all the Force-sensitive children in the galaxy, which this would allow Cal and them to basically, theoretically, restart the Jedi Order.
It's stored in a holocron that Inno Cordova is the Jedi's name. It is a holocron sealed inside this vault. So in order to restart the Jedi Order, which is Seer's plan that she bestowed on the Cal, you need to open the vault to get the Force sensitive list of kids, and then restart the Jedi Order. So we got our MacGuffin, we got our main plot. It wastes no time. It's like, all right, let's go on our quest.
It also establishes that not only do you want to restart the Jedi Order with it, but you also want to kind of protect it from the Empire.
Yes.
Because if the Empire were to get it, obviously, they could hunt down all these kids.
That's what the Inquisitors are after, too.
Yeah.
And since we
it's
saw
multiple
them,
facets to it, but it also makes it a race.
Yes.
It's a race against time to get a hold of this. And this kind of lets us get the excuse to do our planet hopping adventure. We get kind of pointed in multiple directions, but the big one we need to go to is Zepho itself, the home planet of the Zepho.
You can go to Dathomir.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't though.
Yeah, I did at the very end of this section just because I wanted to keep playing Fallen Order, and I'm like, technically this is in this section because it's an optional bit, but
sure.
Yeah.
I didn't, but I've played this game before, so I kind of know what's going down there. But Zepho is a site that the Empire has already been there. They've already done some, excavations of the planet, and they came up with nothing. They failed in their excavations.
This is where Cal's This is where Cal's force ability really comes into play. So instead of logs, you're getting like echoes of the Force that kind of tell you little vignettes of kind of what happened here. It's a really smart Force ability to attach onto a video game character because it lets Cal stand out from like the other Force users by having a unique ability, like being able to touch a guitar and like all of a sudden knowing how to like play a particular song on it. It's very fascinating. So like you see elements in the environment, and instead of like a character who's running from the law who writes down a note, I am currently running from the law, please tell my son Avery that I am indeed running from the law, and write it and seals it away for however long. Like there's some games, it's really smart to have just like a piece of like rathered clothing on the floor, and Cal just go up and touch it and be like, he senses a feeling, like I feel fear and pain in this moment, and you can kind of infer like kind of what happened just from like visual clues, and Cal like focusing on visual cues. And sometimes like there's moments where you see like baby's clothes. I believe you hear like an echo of like a baby crying.
One thing I like about it also is it gives him a force ability that's not aggressive.
Yes.
It's something that's special to him that's not a aggressive like weapon or attack. It's like, Cal just seems to be force sensitive when it comes to emotions and experiences of others, which is kind of a very passive, and it explores that side of the Force that's not just fighting stuff, which I really kind of like. I like a lot. One thing also I like on Zepho, other than the environment that's very, very good also, all the environments in this game are good. I'm just going to go ahead and just say it. As you are exploring, the Empire's kind of installation and all the things they did here, it continues to show the bureaucracy side of the Empire, where they're like, we can't figure out this island. It's almost like the island doesn't want us here.
Yes, there's like intense storms going on. The first Imperial you see in this area is a dead stormtrooper who's being like torn apart by just like the rats on the planet. which showcases two things. It's like, oh, the Empire got here before we did, and that the wildlife on this planet is not to be trifled with, especially those goats. Those goats are a problem.
Goats are dangerous. They ram you and they just keep hitting you. I mean, they'll kill you pretty fast if you ain't careful.
The parry timing on those things are really tight too, so you'll get knocked off a cliff if you're not paying attention.
It'll kill you by fall damage if you ain't careful. The whole sequence is really, really solid, and it leads us to kind of exploring our first tomb, which gives us more of an access to like how the Zepho walk. We get to kind of see their architecture, and it's going to be something that's going to be repeated throughout the game as we kind of are dealing with both the Imperial side of the story and the Zepho kind of like history and learning about the Zepho.
I forgot how puzzle focused this game was. I really like the puzzles and using the Force to like solve, using your combination of your Force push ability that you get and the Force stop to stop a ball in a particular area and then Force push it to where you need. I like these puzzles a lot. It reminds me of some of like the more like fun aspects of like a Tomb Raider game. This is why, as we said, this is like a combination between like a Soulsborne, Uncharted, and Metroid, kind of like all thrown into a blender, which are three types of games I really enjoy. So I really like the gameplay balance in this game. Like, just when I think a puzzle is overstaying its welcome, we get like a really cool combat sequence. Just when it feels like we've done a lot of combat sequence. It's something that Respawn, I think, does very well is pacing. At least in like this first third, I don't remember exactly how the pacing of the rest of the game goes, but this is a very well-paced game. Just when something starts to wear thin, you move the environment change. Just when you explore like the upper level of Zepho and kind of go, I got a feel for this place. You go into like the Zepho tomb, and it's completely different from how the top of the planet looks and everything. And Kashyyyk does that too, with the whole half of Kashyyyk being these lush green environments and the other half being like the Imperial facility built into the forest, and you're going back and forth between those two things.
It's something that they've done well even back in their Infinity Ward days. Because if you play the campaigns of like Call of Duty 4 and Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, those campaigns do that constantly. It's the whole where here's a big fight sequence where you're fighting through a village and taking down a bunch of enemies, and here's a sequence where you'll do the Gillied Up mission where you're doing stealth and you're doing sniping over like a mile away, and then here's an AC-130 mission. And then they continued it when they became Respawn with games like Titanfall 2, where like, here's a very infantry-focused wall-running experience, and then here's a sequence where you're driving your Titan through all these kind of big fights, and then here's a sequence where you jump back and forth in time. And it's just like, it's just that level of, it never gets stale with their games. It's one of the reasons why I always want to play their games, because they just do a great job with that pacing.
Yes.
In the moment to moment. We get told after our adventure into, and the Tomb Raider thing is right on. I was thinking about that a lot when we were playing that sequence. So like, this tomb is just Tomb Raider at this point. In a good way. It's good Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
It's the good side of Underworld, not the bad side of Underworld.
There's a lot of bad sides of Underworld.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I still think about that game. I think about that game more than I probably should.
Yeah, same. That makes me so more sad than anything. Just like, you could have been so much more. But not to delve up old games. Let's
this on a show that doesn't exist anymore, right?
Yeah, exactly. 2.0 is no more. The elevator in this tomb makes no sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know how you're supposed to navigate this elevator in real life.
Yeah, like I was like, so to move the elevator up, I have to push the ball off. Okay, how do I get back down? Why was the ball up at the top? I don't get it. Yeah, no. It doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. It's a video game elevator. I was trying to think of the logistics of that elevator, and it broke my brain, so I moved on.
Yeah, it don't make sense. But down in Zepho, we realized that there's wood from Kashyyyk, which we get a friendly little hologram that gives us some more information about that. So we learn, hey, we got to go visit Kashyyyk, because if Zepho had interactions with the Wookiees, surely that someone on Kashyyyk could talk about it. And this Tarful guy, he seems to be the guy in charge, and he's been fighting since the Clone Wars, and he's an old Wookiee. Let's go meet him. And this leads to another cool sequence that references the lore and all that stuff really well, in which we go to Kashyyyk, and they talk about on the way there, the Wookiees aren't having a good time, because if you remember at the end of the third movie, the clones, the betrayal takes place while they're on Kashyyyk, and they just go ahead and enslave the Wookiees while they're there. And this gives us one of my favorite sequences in the game, where we arrive on Kashyyyk, and there's obviously a major battle already taking place, as it looks like a proto version of the rebellion, led by a guy named Saul
Gerrera.
Saul Gerrera, who will make appearances in other Star Wars. I think he is in Rebels, isn't he?
He's in Rogue One, Rebels, and before he was in Rogue One, he was actually a character in a few episodes of Clone Wars.
Okay, so yeah, he's a pre-established, expanded universe kind of character. And he's a cool character. I like him in Rogue One.
I like Saul Gerrera.
Yeah.
Put Forrest Whitaker in anything, he's gonna have a fun time.
Yeah, Forrest Whitaker was pretty damn good.
What will you become? I love the way he enunciates. It's fantastic.
Yeah, he loses some of that in this.
Well, but he's not. He doesn't have the crazy eye yet. That comes later. He sees something. This is still. He doesn't have that breathing apparatus thing yet. So I like the detail. Like, they didn't make him look fully like he is in Rogue One. There's still, I think, there's still like a 13, 14 year gap between them. So I like how he looks more like his Clone Wars appearance and not where we see him in like Rebels and Rogue One. He's a younger man. He's a younger man still fighting the fight. He's not yet been beaten down by the war with the Empire yet. Yeah.
This is a great sequence. Swimming and climbing onto the AT-AT, taking over an AT-AT.
I love going inside the AT-AT. It feels so like really tight. One thing I love about Respawn in general is that they have a great sense of scale in their like combat sequences, like moving close to this giant AT-AT and then getting inside of it. And because it's like a cargo vessel, a lot of the areas you can go in are very cramped. Like, in order to go down to the next level, you have to climb on top of a speeder bike and kind of wedge your way through to get to like the one room you can kind of stand in. It's so good. I don't know if that's like they looked at like, I don't know if like they like broke apart like a old like AT-AT toy to see how that thing was like, or like looked up like official schematics of them to like kind of get the scale for or anything, but like just the attention to detail there and the scale that I talked about was like, it's fantastic.
One thing I like also is it has a cool little pulp sequence at the beginning where you smack the heads of the drivers together to knock them out.
Yes. That's so Star Wars.
To take over it's very Star Wars. It's something Han Solo would do,
And then you take over it, and it feels like the Millennium Falcon ride at Disney World.
Yeah, but it feels right, and it's a cool, it's kind of on rails, shooter kind of section, but it's short, but it's very satisfying.
Yeah.
This leads to us kind of getting caught up into the fight here on Kashyyyk, because obviously Tarful is not here, but there's a Wookiee that's in prison that might know a little bit about him. So we are going to help participate in the siege of this sap manufacturing / refining section that is doing something. They're refining the sap. Why? Well, it's for the refining the sap. It's that thing we do.
The sap must flow.
Yeah, the sap must flow. Yes, we're getting all of our between Inquisitions and Empires. It's just getting Warhammer and Dune and Star Wars all mixed together in a big old pot.
Wookiees look wet.
They're also very skinny.
They're weird looking Wookiees.
I don't like how skinny they are.
Yeah, no, it doesn't look right. Something about them just doesn't. I think it was a very much a point of contention during like discussion of this game, but yeah, the wet looking Wookiees still freak me out to this day.
I like my Wookiees to be a little bit bulky. They need to, they're supposed to be these like kind of big, hardy creatures, and I like them being a little bit bulky. I want them to look like they got some meat on the bones. I do like this whole sequence. It introduces us to some of the best enemies in the game, between flamethrower troops and the Inquisition troopers, the Parge troopers, and then the Imperial robots that are real fun to fight. Just a ton of great enemies.
The sequence when you first meet the Imperial robot guard is done so well. Like, all the doors just shut. There's no way out, and then this robot just comes at you, and he'll be a standard enemy as we kind of work our way through the game. It kind of does the thing where it's like he's a mini boss at first, and then they'll show up later. But it's a very intense sequence when it first happens.
Yeah, he's dangerous, dangerous kind of enemy. Just a ton of great stuff in here. As you take over the facility and you rescue the Wookiees, Tarfor's kind of lieutenant doesn't exactly know where Tarfor is, but he does know that he's going to find out for you. And so as you are going to wait on that, you get a distress call that says that you're needed back on where you all started this hero adventure, because the Empire has arrived.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to kick us back there. And that's where our next section of the game will be. That's where we'll play next. There's one thing I did blow over by mistake. That initial fight with the ATST.
I was going to go back to that because I'm like, I need to talk about this fight here.
That's one of my favorite fights, I think, in video games. The so showing good. Up and reflecting the AT-AT shots, force pushing the grenades back into its face, and then they give it rockets, so you gotta dodge the rocket, and it's just a big epic fight. And when it is over, you beat it. Out pops from behind, underneath the passenger little compartment is the little driver with his little pistol, and if you don't take him down, he'll start shooting at you with the pistol.
I love that detail, because you walk for it, and the way he just it's not immediately he gets up and starts shooting. He kicks out the entryway door and crawls out, and it's almost a scramble for him to get up before he starts shooting. It's a great animation, and I'll wait for that to play out every time.
It doesn't always do it, because it didn't do it for me on Kashyyyk.
Oh, him popping out? Yeah, he didn't pop out on Kashyyyk. He just did it at Zepho.
Which I like. It shouldn't be every time. It loses its fun factor if it's every single time. I like it if it's random. Yeah.
Even though it's a game, everything is scripted, but...
Well, but you know what I mean. It feels like it. It's all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, really solid first part. I think it makes a great impression. Our next section we will be playing up until...
Oh. Yeah, that's on me. I have that written down somewhere. I forgot I had to talk about that thing. Hold on. I'm going to cut this bit out.
No, you are not. This is State of Save 2.0. There's no such thing as cutting stuff out. What are you talking about?
All right. Well, I'm going to look
That's
up the name of this.
mistakes and things that we made back in State of Save 1.0. Don't you know?
I'm going to look up the name of this boss fight that we're stopping
While you're doing that, I'm going to do this. stateofthesave@gmail.com. At State of the Save on TikTok. We are also on Twitter and Instagram, but I think TikTok's probably the best place to follow us. We also have secured the YouTube channel. There's some stuff on there about Michael playing through Legend of Zelda randomized. That was pretty cool. You can go check that out. If you are a new listener who has not listened to the show before here in this fancy relaunch, you can shoot us an email at stateofthesave@gmail.com. stateofthesave@gmail.com. And we will respond to you. We'll read your email on this here podcast.
All right. I got the stopping point for Jedi Fallen Order.
Which is?
We are going to play through the boss fight with Gorgara. Once he is officially dead, he's a giant bat creature. You can't miss him. Once he is officially dead for 100% certain, that is the stopping point.
You will know when he is dead.
Yes.
There will be there's
definitive.
there's no.
Yeah, I didn't want to cause any confusion. There's a bit where like he'll like kind of leave the fight halfway through. That's not the stopping point. You gotta kill the big bat thing.
He's a classic video game villain that just won't die.
Yep.
until he does.
Sorry for interrupting you. I just want to get that.
No. It's almost like I was stalling. Don't you know?
What?
Yeah, never have we done that. Well, I think it's time to bring it home. Nice tight hour and almost 30 minutes episode. Stay safe. 2.0. Thank you for joining us today. Like I said, we'll be playing Fallen Order over the next couple of episodes. And then we'll do another show with another game. And we'll probably do it again. And then again. And again. But if you send in emails and you say, hey, y'all should play this video game, we'll tell you whether we did on the State of the Save 1.0. Because clearly that show doesn't exist if you scroll down. And if we didn't, maybe we'll play it for this one. Funny how that works. But yeah. It's going to be a little bit weird because we have an ongoing playthrough of the entire Metal Gear Solid series. And 3 of those games were on that show that doesn't exist anymore. So that's going to be kind of weird. Stay safe. Thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it. Make sure to follow us at that TikTok. You can follow us on the Twitter and all that stuff anyway. But who knows how long Elon's going to have us on there. And thank you guys. Stay safe out there.